Hello YouTube, I'm Natanis Likens, and today I want to do something a little bit different. So, to get to know a little bit about me, one of the things you gotta understand is I absolutely love lore. Anytime there's lore involved in a game or a book series or a TV show or even movies, I'm all about it. I've learned pretty much about as much as I can stomach to an extent. And some franchises I know a lot more about than others, and there are some that I like to speculate about. And that is what we are going to be doing here today. I did go and watch a recent game theory video. It's actually about 2 months old, so yeah. I'm a little bit late to the bus on that, but I was watching that and I've talked about it before. I've put my own comments out there on the Game Theorist Reddit. I've also put comments in their videos, and it's almost as if nobody is even listening. Yeah, I get it. Everybody's got their own opinion on that, and Matt Pat had made like an amazing series building the entire channel and his brand. But now that he's retired, I feel like I'm still kind of late to the party on this. And plus, the particular thing I want to talk about is not something that I'm actually as familiar with. Like, I haven't touched any of the games. And what we are going to talk about is Five Nights at Freddy's. So, in that recent video, uh, I don't know who the guy is that's taken over. I've only ever watched like 2 videos, so I do apologize about that. I don't know his name off the top of my head. Uh, but in that video, he is talking about how the backstory for FNAF, Five Nights at Freddy's, goes further back than what anybody had previously thought. To our knowledge, the earliest event in the entire franchise is the bite of 83 or 87, depending on where you fall with that. And for the purpose of this video, he does state that the earliest event is 83. However, there's some evidence that has popped up in Ruin and in Ruin 2 that states otherwise. And basically what it is that there is supposedly the backstory to where the Fazbear Freddy's franchise actually started, and it had to do with a circus called Fall Fest. Uh, I don't think that's the actual name of the circus. I think that's just like the celebration, and this is when the circus actually comes to town. What the name of the circus is, who knows? But I do kind of agree that this seems to be like the origin point of the entire franchise of Five Nights at Freddy's. Whether or not that was always supposed to be a thing, I don't know. I think they're just filling in holes and making up stuff, but that's beside the point. There is something specific in there that I wanted to talk about because it's something in his video that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I'm going to pull this image up now. So one of the things he talks about, if you aren't aware of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, we are no longer dealing with William Afton in the entire series for unknown reasons. As far as I can tell from what little bit I know about the entire series, Afton is officially dead. He is gone. No longer to be seen, though that is kind of up in the air because there is some evidence pointed out. You can see the title of this particular episode up there. So it's Five Nights at Freddy's, The Circus of Horrors. That is the game theory video that we are talking about. So over here on the right side, this is the Mimic. The Mimic is kind of an unknown at this point. We don't know too much about the Mimic, and what we do know really contradicts itself. There's a lot of things about the Mimic that don't make a whole lot of sense. First and foremost, we are introduced to the Mimic in the book series, It was created by Edwin as a toy to play with his son. But then later, when his son dies, the mimic starts acting like his son, and he effectively throws it out or something. That's what the book series tells us, and they do compare the book series to the video game franchise and the lore quite often. I don't see a problem with that because I do see that there's a lot of imagery and a lot of things within the books that I think is meant to clarify things. But we need to talk about the mimic. So the idea came across in his video that the mimic actually came from this circus in the 1970s. Part of the reasoning for it is that the burn marks all over the mimic's metallic body had to have happened in a fire. No doubt about that. You're not getting any argument from me on that. You're not getting any argument from me on which fire caused it. And this is because the evidence is pretty clear. The mimic wasn't around for the final fire event within the series because there's only 4 of them. And the other 2, well, the one at Sister Location, it would have shown up with the burn marks already there before the fire was started there. So clearly it wasn't at the Sister Location fire, or the Circus babies. Yeah, I'm really tired at the moment, so I don't remember exactly what he said there. And the first fire with the original Freddy's, yeah, he couldn't have been at that one either. So he kind of pinned it on the fact that there's evidence to support that the original Circus caught on fire, and that's where the mimic got its burns from. I agree with this. The problem I have is this particular image right here. He states that the mimic learned of and watched William Afton and then created this suit as part of the copy of the mimic within the first VR game, the first Five Nights at Freddy's VR. I have a problem with that, in that if he was around to see William doing that, why is this a like classic circus suit? That doesn't make any sense to me. Afton's suit would have been the spring lock suit. So if the mimic is mimicking what it sees, then why doesn't the glitch trap bunny resemble William in the spring lock suit? Instead, we get like a normal bunny suit here. Now, there are things out there that state that William was using a suit like this before he upgraded to the spring lock suit. I find that hard to believe given the timing of some of these events. And I think it is more likely that this suit from the circus would have been perfect for the mimic to wear. I think the glitch trap rabbit suit is actually the original suit that the mimic wore. The only real evidence I have of that is kind of the timing of events. First and foremost, for the mimic to have gotten those burns, it means that either something was held close to it that ended up burning on it or over it or whatever close to it, and that kind of says that something was on it when it got those burns. Now, as far as the head being burn free, it's described as the head is pretty much a shiny metallic, which means that it had no actual damages done to it. So it was not affected by the fire, but the rest of its body was, and that's kind of evident in its styling and how it's made. It's almost like somebody was trying to repair this thing over the years. I do think that it is related to Afton, but I think Glitch Trap is the original suit that the Mimic was wearing at the circus, which really begs the question, how old is the Mimic? Um, I do agree that the Mimic does seem to have come from the circus, but when was the Mimic made? So if it was made by Edwin as a toy for his son, I'm wondering if instead of Edwin and Henry being the same character, I wonder if Edwin is the scientist that made the original the original AI and robotics that Henry later improves upon, because there is a definite upgrade in the technology of the later animatronics within the series, and the Mimic seems much older than those. This is something that has been pointed out in a lot of the game theory FNAF videos, and something that I think really begs the question of when was it made. We need a little bit more information about the Mimic itself. Like, when was this thing made? I'm starting to get the idea that Edwin and Henry are not actually the same person, or like characters that we can compare to each other. I'm starting to think that Edwin is kind of like he came before Henry and made some of his technology, and then Henry took that and improved upon it. That's kind of what I'm getting. I'm still very far in the book series. I'm still reading up on that, so I haven't gotten to that part yet. I think I'm on like book 5 or something, so I've got to get back to reading those. But there is a strong sense that I'm getting that the suit that is associated with the circus was actually originally worn by the Mimic, and that is where the Mimic and Henry Afton, William Afton actually met. Whether or not they actually crossed paths and met, I don't know, but I'm thinking we've actually got this backwards. Game theory, I think you've got this backwards. I think that William Afton based his suit on the suit that the Mimic used to wear. I don't know what their connection is with the circus. My best guess is that the Mimic saved William Afton at the fire at the circus. The best thing that I can come up with as far as that is, if you look at the time frame where the Fazbear Entertainment opens up in like 1979 or something, and then William's son is killed in 83, that gives us about 4 years, roughly. Actually, it's about 5 years. And judging by the size of the crying child, I would say that the crying child is supposed to be about 5 years old. So when the Fazbear Entertainment was established is about when the crying child was born. Now, that still gives us about 9 years prior for the circus event. Whether or not that 1970 poster is actually when the circus went up in flames, don't know. There's not enough information given on that. But that does mean, if you take into account the age of William when his son was born, and the fact that he does have an older son, we're looking at William was probably about 29 when the crying child was born. I'm just guessing here and kind of like putting together. This is based on a little bit of research I did to see roughly about the ages of people when they were having kids, and the most common thing I find for males is that they generally start having kids about 29. I'm way behind the curve on that. We're not going to worry about that. Anyway, so if he had the crying child at 29, and his other son, Michael, supposedly, would have come earlier than that, by how many years, I don't know. I would dare say that Michael, or William, was a young man when that circus was active. And in fact, it was probably part of his childhood. So he would probably remember the mimic in this suit. Whether or not he knows the mimic, I don't know. But I think that we have a case of a copycat being copied by the target that he copied. So basically what I'm saying is William makes his suit based on this rabbit, which is his golden rabbit suit, and that's what creates the Fozbear characters. I don't know if all those characters actually existed back then. There is evidence in that video that says that they did exist, and then this rabbit is just part of that. It's one of the circus costumes, and this is the thing that William latches on to. For what reason, I don't know. There's not enough information given on that either, but he latches onto that. He goes on to create the spring lock suits, which I find hard to believe that he's the one that creates all that stuff. And at some point in that time is when he meets up with Henry, and Henry becomes the engineer that produces all of the animatronics. And then sometime after that is when everything starts going bad. So whether or not the circus was committing crimes and the mimic was committing crimes, I'm not certain. I don't think the mimic was potentially the one committing crimes back then. I don't think that comes until after he starts mimicking Afton, but I think the rabbit suit is something that the mimic used to wear. And the only real evidence I have of this is one of the various end sequences of I think it's the Ruin DLC that they keep talking about. But it shows a mimic in one of those circus suits. So the mimic, from my perspective, is familiar with and fits into those suits. Makes sense? Do you see where I'm going with that? And if that's the case, then I don't think that this rabbit is actually William. I think this is the mimic remembering his suit from back then and how it was more appealing to look at. And then we get the whole, William Afton doing all the things. Whether or not these two actually cross paths at any point, I don't think they did. I don't think there's any evidence supporting the fact that these two have crossed paths and the mimic is copying William. Yeah, I think they are unrelated, and because of the years of torment and then possibly hearing about what William Afton did, I think the mimic has kind of taken that route and is now why he is effectively the villain. As to where the mimic came from, I still think he was created by Edwin, though that puts the creation of the mimic way up the timeline. It has to have been at least in the 60s that this thing was created. Whether or not the technology was advanced enough to do that, I don't know. It seems a little bit... It seems like a little bit of a stretch to do that. But yeah, I definitely think that the thing that they are missing there is that the mimic was already at the circus, and that would raise a huge fuss. Like, people would be like, oh my gosh, there's a talking machine, or there's a walking statue or a walking robot or something. It just doesn't set right with me. The only way that that would make sense in a circus setting is if the mimic had a suit. And if the mimic had a suit, it would most likely remember what that suit looks like. And as a way of trying to befriend others, it would probably take on the look of what we call glitch trap. And that's what I've got for you. So I hope you guys really enjoyed that. If you want more content like this, where I talk about lore, not necessarily FNAF, I'm just extremely fascinated by FNAF lore. Yeah, leave a like, subscribe, and maybe we'll make some more content like this in the far future. I don't know about that right now, but we'll see. So yeah, I will see you guys later, and I hope you enjoyed this little rant about what I think is going on there, and I feel like I missed something. Uh, and it had something to do with the suit. Yeah, not gonna worry about that. I'll see you later, guys. I'm Natanos Likens, and subscribe.